ఈరోజు అసలు క్లాస్ చెప్పే ఇంట్రెస్ట్ లేదు కానీ అందరూ తగుదనమ్మా అని తయారీ వచ్చేసరిగా చెప్తున్నాను. So today what we are going to see is integrations of Ansible with Docker. So the precondition is you should know Docker, you should also know Ansible. Ansible playbooks meer marchipotarani naaku telusu. There's nothing I can do. Imagining that you still remember the code of the Ansible playbooks, we are trying to understand how to integrate Ansible with Docker. So why should we integrate Ansible with Docker? Docker is a containerization technology. I mean, Ansible is not a replacement for Docker. Ansible is just, Docker is a containerization technology. When you say containerization, what we mainly mean is, tells the process isolation. Docker, we have given so many definitions. These containers are independent of the operating system. All those features are, they are properties of Docker. Now, but if you want to run these Docker containers on n number of servers, then Ansible integration with Docker comes into picture. For example, if you look at any of the Docker commands, when I say Docker run Tomcat or Docker run HTTPD, what is happening? That HTTPD container is getting created on one server. If there are 1,000 servers in your organization and on all these, it's okay. ఇంట్లో ఉన్నప్పుడు మీరు నేను అలాగే ఉంటాం, ఓవర్ యాక్షన్ చేయకండి. ఓకే, ఇంట్లో అంతకన్నా ఎలా ఉంటాం? ఇట్స్ ఓకే. సో anyhow, so basically what much fair Docker containers, which the same containers, if you want to run on n number of servers, I would like to run on 1,000 servers, I would like to create a HTTPD container or a Tomcat container, then Ansible integration with Docker comes into picture. That's it. That's the only way. I mean, if you are working on just 1 or 2 servers, your regular Docker commands hold good. There is no problem. But when you are having hundreds of servers and on all these hundreds of servers, you are interested in creating some containers, regular Docker commands we don't depend on. We depend on understanding how Ansible can be integrated with Docker. Now, the precondition is, if I want to integrate Ansible with Docker, first of all, isn't it true that Docker should be present on all the machines? Docker should be installed on all the machines. Then only Ansible can run the Docker commands. So let me check how many managed nodes I have. /etc/Ansible/ two servers we have. So you see, this is one server and this is the next machine. So only 2 machines, but imagine you are having 2,000 servers, doesn't matter. The precondition is, as I told you, first of all, Docker should be installed on all the machines. Apart from Docker, there is a Python package which is called as Docker-py. This should also be present because currently Ansible is trying to run your Docker containers. For Ansible to integrate with Docker, it requires a package called as Docker-py. Generally, on an Ubuntu machine, whenever you want to install something, we use apt. Apt get install, etc. Right? For Python installations, there is another package management of Python which is called as pip, or sometimes it's called as pip3, depending on the version. Pip is purely for installation of Python related modules. Okay, now with that, let's create a simple Ansible playbook and see how these integrations happen. I'll call this as playbook 27.yaml and name is equals to, we'll say install Docker and also required softwares. Host is equals to, we want to work on all the machines. The next component is tasks. Name is equals to, what are we trying to do? we will first install pip. Okay, so I'll say install Python pip, and for that we depend on apt module. Name is equals to, the name of the software is Python 3-pip. State is equals to present, and update underscore cache, we'll give it as yes. So with this, a software called as Python pip will be installed. Now, once this is installed, next I'll go to the remaining steps. See, how do you install Docker? Generally, for installing Docker, the simplest process we used to follow was go to get.docker.com, copy these two commands, right? These commands are Linux commands, so I can execute them as shell module. So I'll take this. The title is download Docker script. The module that we are working on is shell module, and I'm simply copying and pasting that curl command. Similarly, the next one, execute Docker script, for which also I can depend on shell module, but now we are giving the second command, which takes care of installing Docker. But I mean, with this, Docker gets installed, but that is not sufficient. As I told you, we also require a package called as docker-py. Ee docker-py install cheyadam kosam manam munduga em install chestunnamo. You notice that we are installing a software called as pip. That is why in my playbook, you notice that first using apt module, I am installing Python pip. Once pip is installed, I will run the pip related command and install this software called as docker-py. So let's do that. Name is equals to install docker-py, for which the command is again shell module. The command is pip3 install. What is the name of the package we are installing? So అర్థమవుతుందా? ఈ pip అనే కమాండ్ రన్ చేయడం కోసం ముందుగా మనము pip సాఫ్ట్వేర్ ఇన్స్టాల్ చేసుకున్నాము. తర్వాత with the help of that pip we are installing this package called as docker-py. Now, because you people already know, when the same module is used multiple times, we can use with underscore items, right? So rather than writing the code, I mean, this is okay, but rather than writing the code like this, I can say download Docker script and execute it, and also install what software? Python pip. So what I'll do is I'll replace this entire stuff. Python-pip. దేంతో రిప్లేస్ చేస్తారు? లూప్ యూస్ చేస్తున్నప్పుడు item, and aligned with the shell module, I am going to give with underscore items, and now you specify one after other the commands you want to run. This is the first command. Now let's remove this. Sorry, this is the second command, and finally this is the third command. Sorry, pip kada ఏమవుతుంది? ఇన్సర్ట్ మోడ్ లోకి వెళ్ళడం లేదు. ఎస్కేప్, ఇన్సర్ట్, ఫైన్. సో pip3 install. So just look at my screen. The shell module is actually aligned with the with underscore items. Because we are passing 3 sets of data, the loop will run for 3 times. First time item will be replaced with curl command, which is going to download the shell script. Second time, the shell script is getting executed, which takes care of Docker installations. And finally, a software called as docker-py gets installed. So let us run the playbook. Ansible-playbook, playbook 27.yaml- లోకల్ హోస్ట్ వచ్చిందా? లోకల్ హోస్ట్ పెట్టాము డాకర్. ఇక్కడ కూడా ఇన్స్టాల్ అవుతుంది డాకర్. అన్రీచబుల్ ఎందుకు వచ్చింది? ఇంకో సర్వర్ నాకు రెండే కనిపించాయి. కంట్రోలర్ లో మనకి హార్డ్వేర్ రిసోర్సెస్ ప్రాబ్లం అవుతుంది. కంట్రోలర్ లో ఇన్స్టాల్ చేయకూడదు.
Docker host control Docker host Masala configuration for the is used to we have packets change. That's what the reason.
You don't do it. Generally, we don't do it. So you see, Python pip has been installed, and now it is trying to download the shell script and install Docker on all the machines. On any number of servers.
Script uses one to
APT module. APT module docker.io, there's a package. We can use that. Okay, it's done. But you know, I just want to go to any of the managed nodes and check whether the installation is successful or not. So let's pick up one of the server's IP address and SSH. We are going into one of the remote machines just to check whether Docker installation is done or not. Docker --. Docker is installed successfully on all the machines. But there's one mistake we are doing, that is in the inventory file. I'll just remove some unwanted stuff. Let's remove the remaining things. Localhost I don't want. So basically only 2 servers we have. Ansible is designed to now work on 2 servers. So what happened is we have created the necessary setup so that Ansible can start talking with Docker. Docker is installed and Docker-py is a communication channel between Ansible and Docker. Now I want to start with regular Docker commands. For example, I want to create a Tomcat container. What is the command you people will give? Docker run Tommy or Tomcat you give, and this is how. But the problem is, as you people know, this command is going to create only one Tomcat container on one server. Because I want to create this Tomcat container on n number of servers, we'll create a playbook for that. I'll call this as playbook 28.yaml. And here I'll say name is equals to, put the heading as working on containers. Host is equals to all. The next one is tasks. Name is equals to, what are we trying to do? Create a Tomcat container. And how do you do that? There is a module in Ansible which is called as Docker_container. You people are aware of Ansible modules like copy module, fetch module, right? APT module, service module. Similarly, in Ansible, there is a module called as Docker_container. The main purpose of this Docker_container module is to create containers. Okay, so we need to use that. The name of the module is Docker_container, and the arguments are, you can specify some name for the container. See, we are trying to create a Tomcat container. What name do you want to give? I'll call this as, which image are you working on? Tommy, that's it. Now, if I run this Ansible playbook, you will see that on all the managed nodes, a Tomcat container gets created, and the name of that Tomcat container is going to be app server. With Docker run command lo -- name and istam kada. Same thing is going to happen. Okay. Ansible -playbook. What is the name of the playbook? 28.yaml. It's done. So I want to check whether the container is really created or not. As always, we'll SSH to one of the machines. And once we come here, the command we give is Docker container. Okay, fine. We are as a Ubuntu user. So we'll say sudo Docker container ls. Do you notice from the Tommy image, a container is created? As you can see, the container name is app server. It's just running since the last 19 seconds. But this container has been created on all the machines. The regular Docker commands are doing it only on one server, whereas Ansible is doing that on any number of servers. Similarly, How do you stop a Docker container? Stop anakodu. Nenu interview anukondi, na ego hurt avutadi. Docker stop, and then you have to give the container name or container ID. Ee commands chusam kada. మీ నోట్స్ లో ఉంటాయి చూడండి. Docker stop container name or container ID. If you give, that will actually stop a running container. So I'll show you. Let's go back to our playbook, and here I will say, look at the indentation and everything. Name is equals to stop the Tomcat container. The module is again Docker underscore container module. What is the name of the container we are working on? App server. And in Ansible terminology, state is equals to stop. This is going to stop all the Tomcat containers which are present on all the servers. Similarly, a stopped container, if you want to delete, what is the command we give in Docker? You give the command Docker rm, and then you give the container ID or container name, right? So from Ansible, I want to delete it. So I will give the command like this. I'll say name is equals to remove the Tomcat container. The module is Docker underscore container. The name of the container is app server, and state is equals to absent. Gurtunda manamu apt module lo also, when we are uninstalling something, we used to give state is equals to absent. Same thing. If you run this playbook now, you know what happens? The first module comes in green color, and these two modules will come in yellow color. We know Ansible is idempotent. Because Tomcat container is already created, it won't recreate the container. It comes in green color. Whereas these two modules are new activities, it will come in yellow. Ansible playbook 28.yaml hyphen.
True. But now we're pulling the stream, and in case you want to repeat the same playbook of configuring the Tomcat through this playbook.
On the same server.
Yeah, same server. Let's say I want to change port number, say I change it, I want to restart. Same upgrade.
So you can do the same playbook, you can do automatically change. So do you notice creation of the Tomcat comes in green, whereas the other removing green వచ్చింది. Name తప్పించానా? ఎక్కడ? సూపర్. చూసారు కానీ చెప్పలేదు, చూసారా? ఫైన్, గుర్తుంచుకుంటాను మరి. Anyhow, if I run this playbook one more time, what will happen? మొత్తం ఎల్లో వస్తాయి. Tomcat containers delete అయిపోయి కదా. So Ansible fresh Tomcat containers create చేయాలి. That will be yellow. Again, those containers it has to stop. Then it has to delete. అంతేగాని blind గా green yellow అనకండి. See, everything comes in yellow. Creation of Tomcat, stopping the container, and finally deleting that container. Everything is a fresh activity. Okay. Fine. So this was about how you actually create, stop, and delete containers. Now, imagine that you have 100 servers. On each and every server, I want to create 100 Nginx containers. Each server, I want to create 100 Nginx containers. So 100 into 100, 10,000 containers we want to create. One Docker run command is able to create only one Tomcat container, which means on one server, I'm just talking about one server. On one server, if I want to create 100 Nginx containers, the command I have to give Docker run Nginx 100 times. Same thing, I have to do it on the second server, third server, fourth server, all 100 servers, I want to do that. Now, rather than doing with all that, 3 lines of playbook will perform that activity. Okay. So playbook 29 dot name is equals to, I'll say create multiple Nginx containers for some load balancing. Okay. Host is equals to all. The next activity is tasks. In the task section, I'll say, okay, fine. Create 100 అన్నాను కానీ 100 ఇస్తే ఆ T2 micro machines పేలిపోతాయి కదా. So we will say 10 Nginx containers. Okay. And the module that we are working on is Docker underscore container. The name of the container, and of course, what is the image that we are trying to work on? The image that we are trying to work on is Nginx. Now, thanks. So, the container name, I want the container name to be container 1, container 2, container 3, like that. Because each container should have a unique name. I want to give different names. So this is how I'll give it. You give the word container, and in brackets, you give this keyword called as item. Now, if you remember, when I was teaching you Ansible, I told you that loops can be done using with underscore items. And also I told that there is another way of doing loops, which is called as with underscore sequence. Okay, watch those videos. I mentioned that. I told you that with underscore sequence, I'll teach you when we are working on Docker integrations. So let me show you this with underscore sequence. In the case of with underscore items, what is happening is you are passing certain sets of data and it's running for those many number of times. In the case of with underscore sequence, you don't pass any data. You just tell how many times the loop should run. I'll give a count. I'll say run for 100 times, run for 1,000 times, and the loop runs. So with underscore sequence, and here I will say count equals to what? 10. Now, when you run this program, for the first time, item value will be 1. So the container name will be container 1. For the second iteration, item becomes 2, and the loop will run until it becomes 10. So the final result is 10 containers, Nginx containers will be created on all the managed nodes. Since we have only 2 managed nodes, totally 20 containers will be created. So Ansible -playbook. What is the name of the playbook? Enta 28 or 29? 29.yaml-b. Twenty containers and daily. Okay. Now, to check whether these containers are created or not, let's go to one of the managed nodes. And once we come here, sudo docker container ls. When you do that, please check. I mean, I'll just refresh the page one more time and show you. Yeah. So when I give docker container ls, do you notice the first container name is container 1, then it created container 2, so on up to it is creating 10 containers. I hope you are understanding. I mean, because of lack of hardware resources, we are giving smaller numbers. But just imagine if you are having hundreds of servers and in this way you want to create n number of containers, a simple Ansible playbook is resolving that. If you go with the regular Docker, you can imagine how much time it will take. Wow, అనిపించట్లేదు. వావ్ అంటే ఇప్పుడు అంటున్నారు యాక్చువల్ గా నేను చెప్పాను లేదో, బ్రెయిన్ లో ఒక నాడి ఉంటుంది. నాడులు అంటే సెల్స్ మీ లాంగ్వేజ్ లో. అది that's a cell which actually helps you to appreciate beauty. Something wow, wonderment అంటాను చూసారా. ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్, you see a wonderful rose or you see a beautiful girl, wow అనిపిస్తుంది. మీకు అనిపించదు. Whether you are seeing Deepika Padukone or you are seeing a donkey, same expression. కదా, అదే మాడిపోయిన మసాలా వడ ఎక్స్ప్రెషన్ పెట్టుకుని కూర్చుంటారు. సరేలే, లాస్ట్ క్లాస్ అని ఫీల్ అవుతున్నారా? అదేం ఉండదు, ఇప్పటికి దరిద్రం వదిలిపోయిందని అనుకుంటున్నారు. సరే చూడండి, 10 containers got created on every machine. వావ్ అంటుండండి అప్పుడప్పుడు. అట్లీస్ట్ నేను ఫీల్ అవుతాను అనేసి అన్నానండి. థ్యాంక్స్. సో I want to delete all these containers. Docker ps-aq. Okay. Docker rm-f $docker ps-aq. You know, this is a command which actually deletes all the containers. Because you are running it as an Ansible command, it's going to work on all the machines. Done. So it got deleted from all the machines. How do I know that in Docker underscore container, these arguments are there? Name, state, etc. Always depend on the help documentation of your Ansible. You can simply say Ansible hyphen doc, which module we are trying to work on, Docker underscore container. When you do this, it actually shows you the documentation where the different arguments are there. As always, because we don't have the patience to go through all this. You just go to the bottom part where they'll give you the playbook code. Laptop page down leda. Okay, fine. See? Do you notice just look at the sample playbook code that's given over here. Do you see? The module we are using is Docker underscore container. You are supposed to give some name for the container. You are specifying the image we want to work on. Remember volumes concept? So whenever I want to mount a volume, all you need to give is a word called volumes and specify the volume you are trying to work on. Similarly, let's take another example. Shareable volumes. Do you see how shareable volumes are used? Volumes underscore from. Similarly, linking of containers, links, port mapping, ports. So you can just pick up the information from here and you can actually do it. Environment variables, do you see? env, etc. Okay. So let's take another example. That's the complete module. Okay, fine. So Docker Compose. We know that Docker Compose is used for setting up multi-container architecture. But all the examples of Docker Compose that we have seen, we notice that Docker Compose is setting up that multi-container architecture on one server. For example, I was integrating MySQL with WordPress. What was happening? A MySQL container was getting created and a WordPress container was getting created. Both these containers are created on the same server. So I want this multi-container architecture, but I want this multi-container architecture to be created on n number of servers. All the managed nodes that I have, I would like to have a MySQL container linked with a WordPress container. So let's see how it looks like. Name is equals to implementing Docker Compose using Ansible. Okay, host is equals to all. The next one is tasks. In the task section, first I want to create a database, MySQL. Okay, so we'll say create a Chaliga leda meeku? Name feel avutane one alochistunnara. Create a MySQL container. The module we are working on is Docker underscore container. Now you can give some name for the container. Maybe I'll call it as MyDB. The Docker image we are trying to use is, let's say I want to use MySQL 5 version. Just now we have seen how to pass environment variables, right? You give whichever password you want. Okay.
Generally, when you're writing deployment files, that is also a YAML file, this is also a YAML file. But if you value them unless no market is separate value, see you are specifying the you can't follow this.
That is the syntax of Kubernetes. This is the syntax. YAML is just a process of storing data in key value pairs. No, I mean, we just call it as a file format. It's used for storing data. The keys which are used in Kubernetes are different from the keys which are used in Ansible. This is not supported over there. That doesn't work here. అంతే అది మీరు ఎలా ఇవ్వచ్చు ఇప్పుడు చూడండి నేను ఒక YAML క్రియేట్ చేస్తాను a is equals to b అని ఇస్తాను అది నా YAML కాబట్టి సపోర్ట్ చేస్తుంది ఇక్కడ మీరు a equals to b అంటే కుదరదు keys are predefined. Yes. Ansible understands only these keys. Okay. The next container that I want to create is a WordPress container. So I'll say create a WordPress container. The name, the module name is Docker underscore container. Again, give some name. Shall we call it as my WordPress? What is the Docker image we are using? WordPress. WordPress being a web application, we have to do port mapping, right? I think WordPress runs on port number 80. I want to link it with, let's say, 8989. And this container has to be linked with the previously created database container. We have seen how links are given. What is the name of that container? MyDB. When we are giving linking, remember we used to give aliases. So I'll call that alias as MySQL. Done. So link is Docker networking anyhow establishes a link. Whether you give link or you don't give link. Remember, bridge network automatically connects, so you can ignore it. So Ansible -playbook. The name of the playbook is 30.yaml-b. So what we are expecting is one WordPress container and one MySQL container should be created on all the managed nodes.
So they were asking without using the easier registry, using the easy registry. I want the image, Docker image that has to be copied from Windows machine to Linux machine.
You should not use any registry.
Nothing.
We can. There's a command called as Docker save.
So Docker, the Ansible prerequisite అని చెప్పలేదు కాబట్టి నేను Ansible fetch copy చేయొచ్చు అట్లా చేయడానికి నా ఫైల్ అయిపోయింది. Ansible లో స్టెప్ యూస్ చేస్తున్నారు మీరు అని చెప్పి అడిగాడు. There's no need for Ansible అని మాత్రమే Docker save అని చెప్పాడు. Docker save కమాండ్ ఇప్పుడు అడుగుతుంది.
చెప్పిందా లేదా ఇంతకీ?
Docker save కమాండ్ అని చెప్పేది.
Anyhow, I'm expecting that a multi-container architecture should be created on all the machines. So let us go as always to one of the managed node. And I'll say sudo docker container ls. You see there is a MySQL container and also a WordPress container, and these containers have been created everywhere. I'm just showing on one server, but they are present on all the machines. Again, because I want to delete all these containers from all the servers. Similarly, I want to delete all the images which are present on all the servers. So I'll say Ansible all. What is the command for deleting the images? -af. Okay, wow, see. So all the images have been deleted, so we can have a fresh start. One more example before I go into the next module. I'll take up, this is also a scenario which we have seen in our Docker Compose. We had one Jenkins container, and this Jenkins container was linked with 2 Tomcat containers, right? Of course, at the level of Docker Compose, this entire environment was getting created only on one server. We want to do this now on n number of servers. I'll call this as 31.yaml, and so I'll say create Jenkins and Tomcats for performing CI/CD. Host is equals to all. The last one is tasks. First one is I want to create a Jenkins container. For that, the module we are working on is Docker underscore container. You give some name for the container. Maybe I'll call it as my Jenkins. What is the Docker image we have been using for Jenkins? Jenkins/Jenkins. Jenkins being a web application, we need to talk about the port mapping, right? 5050 linked with 8080. The next one, I want to create two Tomcat containers. So I'll say create Tomcat as QA server. The module is Docker underscore container. The name of the container, I'll call it as QA server. The Docker image we are using is Tomcat or Tommy, anything. Port mapping, we'll say 6060 with this Tomcat container has to be linked with the previously created Jenkins container. So we'll say links, and the name of the container is myJenkins alias Jenkins. The last container we want to create now. Create Tomcat as prod server. The name of the module is again Docker underscore container. The name of the container we want to call it as prod server. The Docker image we are using is Tomcat. The ports we want to map are 7070 with 8080. The linking we are doing over here, I'll call this as myJenkins alias. That's it. Okay, this is my playbook. This is basically going to create three containers. The first one is a Jenkins container. The next two containers are Tomcat containers. Now, I mean, though this code is okay, if you actually observe, do you notice this module and this module, isn't it true that they are using the same set of arguments? Name, image, ports, links. Because the same arguments are used, I can use with underscore items rather than writing it like this. So I can actually put the code like this. Create Tomcat as QA server and prod server. And here the container names are changing, right? So shall we call this as item.a? Image is same, kada? So no need to touch that. Port mapping is also changing, right? So this I will call as item.b. And now when it comes to the links is same, no change. Now we will use with underscore items and you pass the data. A is equals to, for the first time, the container name is QA server, and B is equals to, which ports are we mapping? 6060 with 8080. This is the first one. The next set of data we are passing is A is equals to prod server and B is equals to, I'll say 7070 with 8080. Done. Now you can actually close your playbook and delete the remaining content. So see, this module is going to run for only one time and we will have a Jenkins container coming up. This module is going to run for two times. Why? Because we are passing two sets of data. For the first iteration, item.a will be replaced with QA server, image will be Tomcat, and port mapping will be 6060 with 8080. And this is the linking. Second iteration, it will work on this data. The result is I should have Jenkins and Tomcat containers created on all the managed nodes. Ansible-playbook. The name of the playbook is playbook 31.yaml-b.
The module for Docker file, none could under the other.
A Docker file, you don't have a module, but for building Docker build car, I haven't seen a module. Maybe shell module you can use if nothing is there. See, let's go and check. Sudo Docker container ls. Do you notice? We have the Jenkins container and we also have two Tomcat containers. You're understanding, right? So Docker compose integrations with Docker. 2 days back, అడిగారంట ఇదే ఇంటర్వ్యూలో క్వశ్చన్ డాకర్ అండర్ స్కోర్ కంటైనర్ ఆ అమ్మాయిని ఆ ప్రాక్సీ చేసేవాడు నాకు రాదు అని చెప్పాడంట. ఈ అమ్మాయి నాకు వచ్చు అని అంటే కూడా డాకర్ అండర్ స్కోర్ కంటైనర్ అనే మాడ్యూలే లేదు అని చెప్పి ఈ అమ్మాయి మీద ఫైర్ అవుతున్నాడంట వాడు. ఫైన్, వాట్ ఎవర్. ఓకే, బేసికల్ గా ఇంటర్వ్యూస్ లో చాలా ఇంటర్వ్యూస్ లో జరిగేది ఏంటంటే 100% మీరు ఇంటర్వ్యూకి వెళ్ళినప్పుడు క్రాక్ చేయలేరు. ఫస్ట్ ఇంటర్వ్యూ, సెకండ్ ఇంటర్వ్యూ క్రాక్ చేయలేరు, కానీ చాలా క్వశ్చన్స్ రిపీట్ అవుతాయి. అట్లీస్ట్ ఆ ఇంటర్వ్యూని రికార్డ్ చేయడమో, లేకపోతే రికార్డ్ చేయకపోతే ఇంటర్వ్యూ అయిన వెంటనే ఆ క్వశ్చన్స్ అన్నిటిని మనం జాగ్రత్తగా రాసుకుని వాటి ఆన్సర్స్ గూగుల్లో సెర్చ్ చేసినా దొరుకుతాయి, ఎక్కడో ఒకటి దొరికేస్తాయి. ఆన్సర్స్ పికప్ చేసుకుని ఉంటే 4-5 ఇంటర్వ్యూస్ అటెండ్ అయ్యేసరికి యూ విల్ సీ దాట్ more or less certain common questions are coming up. ప్రాబ్లం ఏంటంటే వీళ్ళు అప్డేట్ చేసుకోరు మన పిల్లలు. ఫస్ట్ టైం అడిగినప్పుడు ఇంటర్వ్యూలో అదే క్వశ్చన్ అడుగుతాడు, వీడు చెప్పడు. నెక్స్ట్ ఇంటర్వ్యూలో కూడా అదే క్వశ్చన్ అడుగుతాడు, వీడు చెప్పడు. అదే సిచ్యువేషన్ లో ఉంటారు. దే గో ఫర్ ప్రాక్సీ, డూ ఆల్ దట్ స్టఫ్ విచ్ ఇస్ నాట్ నెసెసరీ. ఐ మీన్, ఇఫ్ వీఆర్ నాట్ లెర్నింగ్ ఫ్రమ్ అవర్ మిస్టేక్స్, వాట్ ఆర్ వి డూయింగ్? You go first interview, no one can handle, even I can't handle, but repeatedly after attending so many interviews, you see that reoccurringly some questions are being asked. At least those reoccurring questions, we have to do some. నేను చెప్పలేదు, పోనీ నేను చెప్పలేదు అనుకుందాం, నేను క్లాస్లో చెప్పలేదు, నేను దుర్మార్గుడిని, పాపాత్ముడిని, బట్ గూగుల్లో ఉంటాయి కదా ప్రతి క్వశ్చన్ కి ఆన్సర్. నేను ఒక టాపిక్ ఎగరగొట్టేశాను, బట్ ఇన్ గూగుల్ యూ కెన్ సర్చ్, ఓకే దిస్ క్వశ్చన్ దే ఆర్ ఆస్కింగ్, ఫైండ్ అవుట్ వాట్ ఈస్ ద ఆన్సర్. నెక్స్ట్ టైం ఇఫ్ దే ఆస్క్ ద సేమ్ క్వశ్చన్, అట్లీస్ట్ వీ షుడ్ బి ఏబుల్ టు ఆన్సర్. అదే క్వశ్చన్ తో ఇంకొక ఇంటర్వ్యూకి వెళ్తారు మన పిల్లలు. వాట్ ఆర్ వి డూయింగ్?
Recording is always better, sir, because
recording is better, but if we can't record, at least immediately once the interview is over, we'll remember, right? Immediately if you write down the questions. So learn from your experiences. అంతేగాని సార్ చెప్పలేదు అని చెప్పేసి నాకు శాపాలు పెట్టకండి. చేయొచ్చు, చైల్డ్ ప్లే బుక్స్ ని ఇంక్లూడ్ మాడ్యూల్ తో క్రియేట్ చేయొచ్చు. You know, it seems there was a hat seller. You know, hat seller? So that hat seller used to go from village to village selling hats. That was his business. That's how he was living. So one day he was actually passing from one village to another village. Unfortunately, there was a forest in between. Meeku telsi story chaala mandiki. But first part telusu. Nenu cheppi second part teliyadu. So he was passing through that forest and he felt hungry. He sits under a tree. He finishes his lunch and sleeps. Now, when he wakes up, he sees that all the hats which he was carrying in his bag, none of the hats were there. The bag was, empty. He looks around and he sees that on the trees, monkeys were sitting. All of them were wearing his hats. So this was a big loss for him because, he's depending on these hats. So he shouts at those monkeys. The monkeys also shout at him. He throws some stones or something and the monkeys also throw stones. Now, utterly frustrated, this fellow literally he's frustrated. What he does is, in that frustration, he was also wearing a hat. In that frustration, he removes that hat and throws it on the floor. All the monkeys also remove the hat and throw it on the ground. Happily, he collects all those hats and he goes away. This is my andarki telsin story. So what happened was, this fellow, he became old. Second part of the story. And he had a grandson. And grandsons ki grandparents nenu ela kadalu cheptuntaru kada. So he was actually telling the same story. He said, when I was youth, I was actually moving from one place to another place. This happened. Hats were stolen, but with my intelligence, I brought back all the hats. So the grandson also became hat seller. So that fellow also was going to probably the same forest he was going through. And maybe he sat in the same tree, he slept, same thing happened. When he woke up, he saw that hats were not there. He saw that all the monkeys were sitting with hats. He knows, okay, tells already Tatagaru chepparu kada that such a thing will happen. So he thinks, okay, I know how to handle it. He screams at the monkeys. The monkeys also scream back. He throws a stone. They also throw something back. He thinks, wow, Tata, you are intelligent. I know what to do. So he acts as if he's frustrated. He removes his hat and throws it on the floor. One small monkey jumps from the tree, picks up the hat, goes back, and it says, I also have a grandfather. So Learn from mistakes. Fine. Anyhow, let's go back to the next scenario. Similar to the module that we have seen, which is a Docker underscore container, there is another module called as Docker underscore image. The Docker underscore image module is mainly used for downloading images, or if you want, you can upload images, something like that. So chudandi. I want to download Docker images. So I will say go download Docker images. Host is equals to all. The next one is tasks. Name is equals to I'll say download images. What is the module we are working on? Docker underscore image. The Docker underscore image low, you have to specify the name of the image that you are trying to download. For example, imagine that I am trying to download Tomcat image. And then you also have to say source. Source is equals to pull. I mean, the meaning of the word source equals to pull is it will try to download from the Docker Hub. Okay. Earlier, this was not necessary, but now before running this, let us delete all the containers. Let us also delete all the images. Okay. Now run the playbook. Ansible playbook 32.yaml-. How many images we are trying to download? Only one image. Tomcat image should be downloaded if things are working correctly. Download spelling tappu pettana. You see, Tomcat image has been downloaded. The output is coming in yellow color. Now, once you understand how this module is working, I can go back to the same playbook, and can't we download multiple images now? Instead of hard coding it as Tomcat over there, I will use my loop. I'll simply say item. Okay. We'll say item, and aligned with this Docker, I'll say with underscore items. Now you specify the names of all the images. The first one is Tomcat. The next one is HTTPD. The next one I want to download is ghost image. The next one I want to download is Nginx. So the loop is going to run for 4 times and 4 images will be downloaded. As you people know, for downloading of the Tomcat image, it should come in green color because earlier Tomcat image is already downloaded. Ansible is idempotent. It should download only these 3 images. Chusara, Tomcat image downloading is coming in green.
Source could also be the path of the directory in case your customer is Docker image.
No, even if it's a custom, yeah, not directory, Docker ID / whatever is your image name. Do you notice? It's done. If you run the same playbook one more time, all these images, it will show in green. Okay. Now, do you remember we worked on a concept called Docker file? Docker file is used for creating customized images. Once the images are created, we have also seen that these images can be uploaded into the Docker registry, right? So imagine that I have created a customized image on one of the managed node. And now that I want to push it into the Docker registry. This push operation also, I want to automate from the level of Ansible. Okay. So let us go to one machine and create a customized image over there. ఒక manage node కి వెళ్దాం. Here we'll create a Docker file. Remember what is the code? Docker file. A Docker file lo meer em istaru? From whichever you want. Then I want to run some commands. Okay, let's take Ubuntu and install Nginx on it. Okay, so run apt-get update. Similarly, run apt-get install which software we are trying to install. Similarly, you give entry point, CMD, whatever nonsense you want. Now, once all this is done, once the Docker file is designed, you build an image. What is the command for building an image? Docker build -t. Let's call this as Nginx. Here's date and the Nginx 11. I'll say dot. If your intention is to upload this image into the Docker registry, we have already seen that the image name should start with your Docker ID. Okay. Now Docker ID vachi IntelliQIT, so I will give it as IntelliQIT. When you sign up for Docker account, you will get some ID, right? Whatever is that ID, you give that ID / any name that you want. Okay, it's done. So once it is done, you will say Docker images and you say sudo Docker images. And do you see the image IntelliQIT / Nginx 11 has been created just a few seconds back. We want to now upload this. Okay, so let's see how the playbook looks like. That image is present only on one server. So host section you should not give all. You should give only one server's IP address. My customized image is present only on one server. From that one server, we are trying to perform a push operation. Okay, so VIM playbook 33 dot. Name is equals to, what are we trying to do? Push operation cheyalante steps gurtunnaya. First, we used to give Docker login. మర్చిపోయారు కదా, డాకర్ లాగిన్ అని ఒక కమాండ్ ఇస్తే అది యూజర్ నేమ్ పాస్వర్డ్ అది అడిగేది. అది ఇచ్చిన తర్వాత we used to give the Docker push command. Okay, so same thing I'll do. I will say login into Docker registry, whatever. Hosts is equals to. We are not working on all the machines. We are just working on one machine. The next activity is tasks. In the task section, I'll say name is equals to login. How do you log in? There is a module called as Docker_login. Docker_login name arguments తీసుకుంటారో నాకు గుర్తులేదు. So Ansible-doc, the name of the module is Docker_login. Okay, so ante kada, it's simply taking username and password. That's it. That is sufficient, and it should log in. Brilliant. So Docker_login and username or name? Username. Imagine that my username is IntelliQIT and password also is IntelliQIT అనుకోండి. After this, the next operation, once the login is successful, we want to push that image, right? So name is equals to upload the Docker image, for which the module is Docker_image. What is the name of that image that we are trying to work on? IntelliQIT / Nginx 11. I think we have to give push is equals to yes anukunta. Okay, I have doubts, so let me check it. Ansible-doc, what is the module that I have doubts on? Docker_image. So when I go to this documentation, మనం ఏమి ఇచ్చాం? పుష్ ఇస్ ఈక్వల్స్ టు yes ఇచ్చిన పని చేస్తుంది అని మీరు చూడండి. ఏమేమి ఇచ్చాడు? నేమ్ ఇచ్చాడు. సోర్స్ ఇస్ ఈక్వల్స్ టు లోకల్ ఏంటి? This is pull operation they are doing. When you are doing push, I think push is equals to true might be sufficient. I don't require anything else. So push is equals to yes, I'm not true on yesterday. Okay, that's it. This is the playbook. The first part of the playbook is going to log in, and the second part of the playbook is supposed to upload the image into the Docker Hub. కాకపోతే నా యూజర్ నేమ్ పాస్వర్డ్ నేను ఎందుకు చెప్తాను అది కరెక్ట్ కాదు కదా కాబట్టి నేను ఏం చేస్తానంటే కాసేపు ప్రొజెక్టర్ని ఆపేసి అసలు పాస్వర్డ్ పెడతాను I'll stop sharing the screen because ఎక్కడ ఉంటుంది నేను ఇందులో చీటింగ్ ఏం చేయడం లేదు యూజర్ నేమ్ పాస్వర్డ్స్ మారుస్తున్నాను అంతే ఇంకేం లేదు Fine. So now that I have changed the credentials, start sharing the screen and continue. So this is the playbook we have created, playbook 33.yaml, and let's run the playbook. All I changed is the credentials. Everything else in the playbook remains the same. Okay. Ansible -playbook, playbook 33.yaml- successful. Kani state is equals to uploading kottindi. State is equals to present, but all of the following are missing. Source is equals to pull ivala. File path kadandi adi. Ansible enta module image. Docker_image kada. I'm sorry. Docker_image. This is for archiving the image, the saving concept and all that. If you want to do through Ansible, this is what they are using. Source is equals to local betastana.
So different parameters are different. Local and built and
Full antenna. I don't know. I'll give source is equals to local and we'll try it. Okay. దానికోసం వెయిట్ చేస్తలేదండి జాగ్రత్తలో నింపుతాను కాశీ ఆ దౌర్భాగ్యం ఏంటంటే ఇన్ని జాగ్రత్త గిటబ్ లో పుష్ చేసేస్తున్నాను నేను ఈసారి జాగ్రత్తగా ఉంటాను ప్లేబుక్ 33.yaml ఏంటండి సోర్స్ ఇస్ ఈక్వల్స్ టు లోకల్ కదా Okay, so now that I have made the changes, let's hope it will work. Ansible -playbook, the name of the playbook. Upload operation is successful. Okay. How do you check if the upload operation is successful or not? You can just go to the Docker Hub and you can check it, right? Ekra. Do you see? There is an image called as IntelliQIT Nginx 11, which was pushed just a few seconds ago. Okay, that's it, done. So this is how Ansible is integrated with Docker. Ansible integrations with Docker Swarm and Kubernetes are not necessary because anyhow Docker Swarm and Kubernetes have the capability to run containers on n number of servers. Docker Swarm though, if I tell that you create n number of servers, so I don't need to do integrations. In the case of regular Docker, we have this problem because Docker containers are designed to run only on one machine, then only Ansible integrations with Docker come into picture. Okay. Now, this was something that I have personally seen being asked in interviews about this Docker_container. They just gave a sandbox environment where Ansible was already installed, and they said you create a Tomcat container, index.html file, the copy cheymannaru anduloki, and the container should come up with that index.html. What is the documentation? They just opened a browser, and in that browser, questions were there. The first question was create a Tomcat container. The next question is, first design a Docker file. Then you create a Tomcat container. Ansible playbook should call that Tomcat container and deploy the Tomcat container. And after deploying the Tomcat container, finally, the fourth step was saying you execute some curl command through which you check whether that index.html page is deployed or not. This is the task. First of all, you create a customized Tomcat container via Docker file, create an Ansible playbook to convert that into a container. And finally, the last step was simply checking whether the Tomcat URL was responding or not. So we created that playbook. Tragedy entante indulo, the interviewer who was asking that question, he had no knowledge of Ansible, he had no knowledge of Docker. What he tells okkate, a fourth step lo a curl command execute chesi output vachinda leda chustadu vaadu. ఇప్పుడు మీ పరిస్థితి ఏంటి? మీరు ప్లేబుక్ అంతా కరెక్ట్ గా రాసి చిన్న మిస్టేక్ చేశాను నేను కుజో ముర్రో అన్న ఎవడు వినడు అక్కడ. Until and unless the output comes, no one is ready to listen to you. So saying that, oh, almost 70% playbook I have done correctly, but 30% is wrong. No one is going to look into all that. The interviewer was just waiting for me to finish off the playbook so that he can execute the curl command, check whether that index.html file is loading or not. Otherwise, they'll say you're done. So అలాంటి ఇంటర్వ్యూస్ కూడా జరుగుతాయి. శాండ్ బాక్స్ ఎన్విరాన్మెంట్స్ ఇచ్చి మిమ్మల్ని రాయమంటారు. భయపెట్టడానికి అండలేదండి. That's the reality. So you have to, get accustomed to all that. So that's it. Ansible Docker integrations are over. I'll upload all these playbooks into the Git repository. There's a good news for online candidates. Okay, online candidate session is over. Bye-bye.